Program going straight to the Prime Minister Scott Morrison.
All around the country. Today we've come together and I want to introduce everyone who's with us. We've got Alex Wolf from Endometriosis Australia. Gay Brotman's also here joining us. Good to see you, Gay. I'll come back to you in a second. Donna Ciccio, who's from the Endometriosis Australia, the director and the co-founder. We've got Professor Jason Abbott, who is here of the School of Women's and Children's Health. Dr Susan Evans is from Pelvic Pain Foundation. Jess Taylor from Quendo, which is Queensland Endo. And it's great to have Jess here. She's going to make a few comments a little later. And Syl Friedman from Endoactive. And so you can take from that, we're going to have a bit to say about endometriosis in a few minutes' time. But also together with us today is the Casella family, who I first met back in 2018. And John Casella and Rachel Casella are here with us, and Rachel's going to have a bit to say about another very important announcement we're making today. And Isaac Casella is here. He's fast asleep in his pram, and he is the brother of Mackenzie Casella. And Mackenzie's mission was named in her honour, and a number of years ago, back in 2018, we commenced a trial program which was about genetic testing to support people who are looking to have children, to be able to get tested for a range of different genetic disorders that would enable people to plan and to have choices and to ensure that they could pursue their dream of having children and at the same time having greater confidence about the children that they'd be bringing into the world and being able to raise. And they're joined, of course, by all the grandparents. Well, three of the grandparents are today, David Banham and Wendy Banham. I didn't see Wendy before, she might be around here somewhere. And Ross and Linda Casella. So it's great to have all of you here with us to this very important announcement. Now, as I said, these two issues you might think are related, spinal muscular atrophy and cystic fibrosis and endometriosis. Well, when it came to our own journey, when Jenny was a mid-teen, all the way through to her mid-20s, it wasn't until then that she learned that she was suffering from endometriosis, and Jenny has told her story over the last 24 hours. And I want to thank her, and I know everyone around me thanks Jenny for doing that. She told the story of crippling and terrible pain. And I knew it because Jenny and I started going out when I was 16. And she lived through that. And she's incredibly tough. I know that personally. But this was the most awful thing to see someone you love going through every single month and not understanding why. Having been to the doctor and been given some medication, but not understanding what was causing this every single month. And then, as I said, in her mid-teens, she was diagnosed with very severe endometriosis. And this happened at the same time that we were in the process of trying to have a family and understanding why we were having challenges there. And so these stories of fertility treatment and endometriosis for us came together. And everybody's story about trying to realise their dream of having children is very different. For many, they are blessed and it just happens. And that's the majority. But there are millions of Australians for whom that is not their story, and for many different reasons. And endometriosis is one of them, but there are many others. And there are others who are seeking their dream of having children, and that dream, even after it's realised, as it was the case in Mackenzie's case, is crushed because of debilitating diseases and genetic conditions that destroy life. And so what today is about is saying to all Australians and talking to them about their dream of having children, their dream of trying to live a life which is pain-free, or as pain-free as you can make it, and to being able to live with conditions like endometriosis, and to be able to manage that pain, about going about your life, about not having to plan your entire day about how you manage endometriosis, about the sort of jobs you can have, the sort of holidays you can have, whether you can go out at night, whether you can see your friends, or whether you can even go and exercise, and ultimately about whether you can have children or not, what sort of job you can choose to have, because you have to think about how you're going to manage that condition. So we know, But that's not why we're doing it. We know as a family, Jenny and I, that it impacts just so many other lives. 1 in 9 Australian women and girls suffer from endometriosis, and they suffer. I can't underscore that more strongly. It is a disease that you suffer with, and constantly and regularly, and it is unrelenting. It is so hard on people. And for those who love them, it is also very hard to see them go through it. And we're doing something about that today. And I'm going to come to SMA and cystic fibrosis in just a moment. But what we're announcing today for endometriosis is a $58 million package. And this builds on the work that Nicole Flint and Gai Brotman started. Nicole and Gai, when Gai was in the Parliament, they set up the Friends of Endometriosis. And there are others, Nola Marino, who's another colleague who was very passionate about this as well, and her daughter and what they went through. And this was about parliamentarians working together to bring a focus on a very important issue. 2, I know, very influential but very persuasive women. Nicole is standing here with me, and I'm sure Gai would agree with me. That's the way to describe Nicole. And the 2 of them worked together to make sure we got a focus on this issue. And we began the Endo Action Plan back there in 2018, and here we are today with a $58 million package, which is designed to address the many different needs, whether it is the specialised pain clinics, some 16.4 million, the pain clinics that are there to provide support to women and girls who are going through this terrible condition, and how they can manage it, get access to the right advice, the pain management, the options that they have in front of them. There is no cure for this, but all the time they're learning better ways to how people can live with it and try and minimise the impact it has on their lives that the rest of us take for granted in so many different areas. There's support for the endometriosis management plan. There's support for clinical scientific trials. There's support for clinical practice guidelines. These things make a huge difference in being able to early diagnose and support women early on. I can only imagine how different Jenny's life would have been had she found out when she was 16, not when she was in her mid-20s, 26, and how different that could have been. And that wasn't the doctor's fault. Jenny, at no time, I've never heard her say once, she's never blamed the medical profession for that. Not once. That's just never, that's her nature, I've got to tell you. But at the same time, it's important that we get the education and the awareness so clinical professionals and others know and can pick up on it and connect people to services. And that's what this plan is all about. There's changes to the Medicare benefit schedule, there's digital learning tools and education tools. And so I'm really proud of this package because it's about focusing on the health issues that really matter to women and girls every single day. It's going to mean, I think, a better health future for our kids, for our young girls growing up and going through a time in their life when everything's changing. Everything's changing for them. Their bodies are changing, their health is changing, and their outlook is changing. And to be having to deal with something like this at the same time and to have the support available is very important to our country. I'm very pleased to ensure we're committed that in the budget. The other program we're announcing today is the realisation of Mackenzie's mission. And this was back in 2018. We put in place funding to begin a trial program to testing, to check if couples were carriers of particular conditions. And spinal muscular atrophy was one of those, SMA. And this is just a heartbreaking disease. It is just absolutely terrible. And Jenny's got to claim some credit for our focus on this one too, because I remember, told this story, you'll remember, that there was an awareness forum going on in the Parliament. Not unlike what Gai and Nicole would do on endometriosis, and this was on SMA. I was Treasurer at the time, and Jenny rang me up, and she became aware of this because of a friend of hers in the Shire had experience with this and had suffered terribly. And she said, "What are you doing today?" And I sort of ran through what was a pretty busy diary. She said, "Forget it, you're going to that forum and you're going to listen to what they have to say." And I did what any man in that situation would do and just say yes. And I'm glad I did, I walked in the back and I sat at the back of the room quietly, and I just listened to heartbreaking story after heartbreaking story. And I walked out of there and I said, we're going to do something about this. And linked up with Greg Hunt and the Excellers, and we began that trial program that provided for the clinical testing of couples looking to have children who would have been going through the very things I've just been talking about often as well. And so we put Mackenzie's mission to work, and it's done its work, and it's proved to be incredibly effective. And so today we're announcing that we will help couples plan for their pregnancy by investing $81.2 million to create a new Medicare item to support access to genetic testing for 3 serious genetic conditions. And they are, of course, a spinal muscular atrophy, cystic fibrosis, and fragile X syndrome. And so we'll be going forward with that. You know, Mackenzie lives on in these programs and providing hope and reassurance and comfort to Australians as they're looking to create the most precious thing we have, and that is family.